pre-undercoated, unpainted minis. This one here, I've cleaned a few mould lines off and what have you, and just given it an undercoat here with some Reaper sepia liner. When I scraped the mould lines off, I decided that I wanted to make it on base. So it comes with this base, and it has this moulded decoration on here on the bottom of the base, so it looks like it actually stood on something, but I thought that was a bit boring. So I've cut that off, which is why he's currently impaled on this old paintbrush. And I've made my own base. So this is a Rubicon 60mm round base, which I've put some filler on with a couple of bits of slate and a nice chunk of cork here that's going to be a little rock formation. So I'm going to paint that up in between while we're waiting for this guy to dry. So here's the packaging. It comes in a fairly small blister pack, and these guys are £4.99, which is a bit of a bargain really for what you get. And he's available obviously at Mighty Lancer Games, so why not check that out. Here we go. Let's crack on. So to start off with, I've got some Reaper Russet Brown, which we're going to use as a base coat. So I really only use this liner as kind of a sealer for the miniature once I'd scraped the mould lines off, because the Vallejo primer that comes on it I'd scraped off in places down to the bare plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a base coat all over of this Russet Brown, which I've thinned slightly on the wet palette, and just give it a nice all over coat of that, and then we're going to dry brush and highlight it up from here to give it its final orangey brown coverage. So hope everybody's okay. Thanks everybody for joining. If you've started watching us already, or if you're watching later on YouTube or whatever, hello to you. Hope you've all had a great day. I've been looking forward to getting a bit of painting done all day, because we've been staring at computer screens all day today. So one advantage of taking this model off its pre-formed base, and it was quite tricky to get off. I had to saw the base in half and then get the clippers out and kind of break it off, because I just couldn't get the knife in to the edges, although I could see the joint. So I had to be a bit ruthless with it. And then the reason that I wanted to do that was because all this detail that's underneath here, you just couldn't get to, because the base was obscuring so much of it. It would have been very difficult to get to that to do any kind of decent job on it. So it had to go, and plus and then put it on a base that's the right size for what I had in mind. And this base, hopefully, once it's painted up, will look a lot more effective than it currently does with a bit of polyfiller and what have you. You might notice also on the painting table here in front of me, there's a couple of rust monsters, and they're also my backup figures for if I have to wait for anything to dry on this guy. We'll use a bit of paint upon those, because they're going to end up to be a similar kind of colour scheme to our Umber Hulk here. So I've had this guy, this model, in the cupboard of shame ever since they first got delivered to us a couple of years ago from Wizkids, and I knew I wanted to paint one. In fact, I've got a couple of them. I knew I wanted to paint one, and to be able to use it in our D&D games and what have you, when we do eventually get back to playing some. Obviously, I've had this model stashed away since pre-COVID, times, and I thought I'll get around to painting it one day. And now finally it's seen the light of day. And it's a great looking model. There's loads of fantastic texture on it. I've seen some amazing colour schemes for these things. I saw one the other day that somebody had painted like this, the coconut crab. I don't know if you might have seen pictures of circulating around on various painting groups online, where people have been painting tyranids as the in the coconut crab style colour scheme, like a dark brown with various mottled features and whatever. I saw one of these painted like that, and it really looked amazing. But I'm just going to go for a lot simpler, all over brown with bits of lighter brown and oranges. I think we're going to paint his pincers at the front with a bone colour and the tips of his claws there, and then we're going to see what it looks like. Maybe. I've not decided what colour we're going to paint his eyes yet. They might have to be quite a bright yellow, I think. So Umber Hulks are subterranean creatures that you might find if you were adventuring in cave networks, or you've come through a dungeon and ended up into an area where these tunnelling creatures have burrowed through the sides of the tunnel or corridor that you're going through. So you might find one of these lurking around in an abandoned dungeon complex or whatever, Dungeons and Dragons. But normally you would find them in caves and caverns and things, and they're quite a challenge to fight against. They've got heavily armoured hides and these massive claws can do a terrific amount of damage to low level parties. So I want to leave the inside edge of these claws there, this lighter area. I want to leave that a lighter brown, so we're going to go over that with the next colour that we've got on the menu, shall we say, which is a Vallejo flat earth. So we're going to do that. So we're going to use that colour to dry brush on highlight the rest of the model, but we are going to use that as our base coat on that under claw area, and where it's not as heavily armoured. So I can hold on to it. Alright, so... Oh, okay, sorry. So you might be wondering, if you only just joined, as Mrs. MLG has just pointed out there, that you might be wondering why this model is impaled on a paintbrush. So this is an old paintbrush that I've had kicking around in the thing, and it only had a few bristles left, and I needed something that I would be able to hold on to the figure with. Now, cut its base off obviously, so what I did was I heated the end of this paintbrush up till it was glowing, and then I melted it into the foot of the figure so I could hold on to it and spin it around and get to all this lovely detail underneath. And then what I'm going to do is, when I finish painting it, is cut it off the paintbrush, or pull it off the paintbrush, and glue it onto this base that I'll be showing you shortly. Right, so I think that'll do. So this is Reaper Russet Brown, which I think we used that the other night. I think so. Right, so that's an all over coat of Reaper Russet Brown. The only thing I've left are the tips of the claws, because they're going to be like a bone colour. These mandibles, they're going to be the same kind of colour. Excuse me. And these inner sections here on the arms, which we're going to go over now with Vallejo flat brown. So I'll just give the brush a wash and wipe out. I like that. because the mini did a bad thing and it's being tortured.
Oh, I love like melted it.
Yeah. Right, so. What have I done now? Broken it. Excuse me a second. I don't know what I'm doing. It's alright. I can do it.
Just show the tattoos.
Yeah. There we go. Right, fixed it. So, this is Vallejo Flat Earth, which is a bit lighter, and we're just going to get a little bit of that and more on my fingers. I'm not going to rub it on the painting mat like I did the other day, because that's silly. So, I'm going to get a little bit of this flat earth, and I'm not going to use that paintbrush again because it's too big. I'm going to switch over to this guy. And then we're going to just paint the insides of those arm areas there. Oh, painting the insides of those arms, like I've just said. Is that alright? Right, so, done the insides of the arms, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get our dry brush, and we're going to get a nice liberal dry brush all over the model with this flat brown, because that will lighten up the rest of the arm pieces. So, what we're going to use is a Citadel medium dry brush. I've got a clean piece of kitchen roll here. I'm just going to put that over there. So a good bit of that. Just going to push it. Nice little liberal application all over the model, just to start that transition into a lighter brown. It's certainly my intention not to use any washes if I can help it. I'm going to try and not use any washes unless it really looks as if it needs darkening now, or the detail defined a bit more. If I've gone a bit too heavy with my dry brushes, I might have to crack a wash or two out, but I'm going to try and do it without, and we'll see how it goes. So trying to be all careful and just get it on. Look, disaster. My paintbrush is coming a little loose, I'll have to be a bit careful. So, as always, I've put too much paint on my palette here, you might be able to see that. So we're just going to pretend that hasn't happened. And I'm going to leave that and come back to it shortly. So, we've used flat earth. What we're next going to use is some Vallejo US Field Drab. And we're going to just do the same thing, I'm just going to give it a nice dry brush across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to paint the base black. And then while that's drying and this is all fully dry, we'll come back. So, US Field Drab. A bit of that on. So, that's a little bit damp, so we'll use a different dry brush. So this is a Army Painter small, not Army Painter. What am I talking about? Citadel small dry brush. Yeah, so we're just going to get a bit of that on. And brush a little bit off. And then crack on. There we go. Disaster has struck. My paintbrush is coming loose. Excellent. Apart from that coming loose out there, I might have to just get a little blob of super glue and just reinforce that. But also, I can see, I don't know if you will be able to see, but I can just see there's a little splodge in there. And there. I just need touching in where you can see white through the brown. Super. Right, let's get back to a bit of dry brushing. So the other thing that I'm going to do in a minute as well is once we've painted the base and we're waiting for that to dry, is I will show you what our finished miniature from Monday's stream looks like. Just going to give the inside of those arms where we do it the flat brown, just going to give that a little dry brush over there so it starts giving that a little bit of texture as well. Beautiful. Right, so he's going to need a little dab of super glue on him, just to hold that thing in. My melty experiment was not sufficient. Just going to put there. Could I possibly have the super glue? Thank you. So this is Army Painter super glue. This is what we're currently using at the moment. I've also recently tested out a new type of super glue which we will be selling in store shortly, which is made by one of the companies we deal with that produce railway scenics, which is Javis. I don't know if you may you might be aware of Javis, which are a company that make primarily railway scenery products, flocks and whatever. But they also produce their own brand of super glue, and I've tested it out and it is excellent. So it's in some quite fuss-free packaging, but you do get a decent volume for about £3. So we're going to start selling that on the web store, and there's 3 versions. There's like a thin, a medium, and then a thick type. and they're great. So look for those soon. Right, black. Can I have the pokey tool, please? Thank you. We have a dressmaker's pin as a pokey tool here. Just a big splodge of that. Might need a little bit more yet. But so this is just some Reaper solid black, but any main black will do. And for this, we're just going to add a smidge of water here. And then I'm going to liberally apply this all over the base. Liberally, my word of the day. So if you missed the start of the video where I was talking about this base is a Rubicon base. So Rubicon makes some amazing World War II, and soon they'll be doing Vietnam. You have to say it like that. Nam. 28mm or 1/56 scale model kits of tanks and jeeps and all that kind of stuff. And they've got some fantastic looking Vietnam infantry coming, and helicopters. I think they're doing the helicopters. Just going to need a bit more paint on there. But they also make these great bases, and I really like these bases and try and put a lot of stuff on them. So if you look there, they've got this nice dish surface to them. So like there's slightly different indentations on both sides, but it's got this little lip around the outside, and all these little indentations really help your basing material adhere to them really well. So I like using these. I've based a whole load of Peri-Napoleonic cavalry on their cavalry style bases, which are a nice oval, 25mm across, 50mm long, with this nice curve edge to them. The only slight downside with these is that they don't fit nicely in the Citadel painting handles. They don't, because the lip is rounded rather than a chamfered edge or a sloped edge. You need a bit of blue tack to stick them onto the top of your painting handle. That's the only thing. The Citadel painting handles that I like to use really like you to have Citadel bases, or that style of base where it's sloped from a fine edge at the bottom. You do work alright with the Wizkids bases, the ones that you get provided with a lot of the Wizkids minis that I've discarded in the case of this Umber Hulk, but that flat round base, that would work fine. Bit of cork is wobbling ever so slightly. I think we need to sit this on top of the radiator for a bit of extra drying time. Knocked this together earlier this afternoon, and I don't think the PVA glue has quite gone off as it should have done. But that's fine, we'll sit it on top of the radiator and hopefully it will solidified enough for me to be able to dry brush it shortly. Haven't missed any bits. I have missed a little bit in there. Or paint all over my fingertips now. Excellent. So there's our cavern base with a couple of bits of rock and this nice protrusion of stone there. Just keep seeing little bits. That's one thing about using cork, because it's a natural material. It's got all those little fine cracks in and what have you. It looks great when it's painted up as rock, but you've just got to make sure that you're getting all the tiny little nooks and crannies. I like this because it's got this kind of overhang edge on there. It looks like it's shattered. Excellent. Right, so I'm going to pass that over to Mrs. MLG so she can put it on the radiator. Excellent. Right. So where's my figure from earlier in the week? I can't remember what I've done with it. Oh, it's on there. So Mrs. MLG is just going to grab me the miniature that we painted on Monday. I finished it off after the stream on Monday night, and hopefully you'll all think it looks okay. So here we are. I'll shift that out of the way so you can see him properly. Here he is, Dana. I didn't get around to reposing that dagger ever so slightly, but I should do. We're going to make a little video, which we'll then put on our YouTube channel, so please check out our YouTube channel. We're going to make a little video showing you how to repose Reaper miniatures, or Bones miniatures, when they're slightly distorted out of the packet. So we might do that over the next couple of days, and we'll get it uploaded to the YouTube channel. And I'll stop waving this guy around so you can see him. So I tried really hard to get the studs on his armour just right, and when he gets into focus, our focusing software is not behaving. Is that better? I think that's better. So I painted the cloak and everything while we were on the stream. I've just used some Gamer's Grass tufts on there. Just used a couple of Gamer's Grass 2mm tufts just on his base. Just painted the stock base that comes on him in grey. And there we go. That's him. I'm quite pleased with him. He's going to take place in our miniature collection. He'll get used in one of our D&D games coming up. And if I ever feel particularly adventurous, I might revisit his face slightly, but I'm never going to try and paint his eyes because it just ain't going to happen. So there we go, Dana Male Rogue, and we've got a poll going on Facebook and Twitter, so you can tell us which miniature you think we should paint next Monday from the sub box. And so we've already got the next 2 months sub boxes set, or what figures are going to be in those, and hopefully if you're a subscriber to the sub box you'll really enjoy those. So let's get back to our Umber Hulk, because he hopefully our bit of super glue should have dried. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint his mandibles and his claws now. In fact, no, I'm not. That would be silly because we're not finished on the rest of him, and if I'm going to dry brush him, we don't want to get it over the bits we've already done. So next we're going to go for some Vallejo Ochre Brown. Ochre, I want to say it as. So we're just going to have a go with that. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to apply just a tiny little bit just to these areas under his, like these areas, inside his claws, just to lighten those up slightly. Maybe stuff back. So this is quite a yellow compared to the colour that we've got on top, so that's going to be underneath it. So hopefully this should give us a good highlight edge. Oh, beautiful.
Dragon says that they want a big knight thingy in the subbox.
A big knight thingy. Don't know what we can do there. A big knight thingy. Don't know. See what we can find. And so we've done that, just a little bit in there, just to make them a little bit more yellowy, fleshier inside the claws, like your palm of your hands. Well, I suppose that's quite hard skin, isn't it? But then if this outside of your skin was like chitinous armour, then that bit would be a little bit softer, wouldn't it? I guess. Right, so the next thing we're going to use is some Vallejo orange brown. And with this, I'm just going to give a dry brush all over the outside of the model on all those armour panels, and this will be pretty much the final highlight for that. That brush is dry enough, so we're just going to do that. And then we'll crack on with the other bits, and we're doing great for time. So. If anyone's painted one of these Umber Hulks before, I'd definitely like to see how you would do it, because I've got another one to paint. And open for inspiration for that second one. I've got a really nice model that we were sent as a sample from a company called Westphalia in Canada. And we've been looking at stocking some of their figures, but they do some really nice figures, but so far unfortunately the customs charge and what have you just made it a bit prohibitive for being a range that we could stock. But we're continually working with some of these companies to try and get around like the customs, well, not get around, but work through customs issues and what have you to make it better, so we can stock as many fantastic figure ranges in the shop as possible, because we know that lots of people like different figure ranges. Yeah. So I think that's looking pretty cool already. In fact, I'm quite happy to say that the bulk of his body is pretty much done, and we're just going to move on to painting a bit more detail in it. We'll see how he dries.
Wraith Knight in the subbox we've got.
Wraith Knight. We had the Dust King, was in December, I think. Who's kind of like a ghostly knight figure. Or Wraith, a bit like the Witch King from Lord of the Rings. Right, so next we're going to move on to that Vallejo Buff, and we're going to use that as the base coat for the claws and the mandibles. Too much paint, too much paint. So,
we don't repeat them, do we? If we've been in before, don't we?
No, yeah, so if a particular mini has been in the sub box previously, then we won't put it in again. We've got a big long list and we're trying not to duplicate any figures. So far I think we've been successful in not duplicating any figures. So if you see this Vallejo Buff, that's very much like an ivory bone kind of colour. It's quite a nice nice colour there, so don't be put off by the name, because it's traditionally a colour that you would use for World War II US infantry like there are gaiters on their boots and what have you, but you don't just have to use these paints for what painting guides tell you should use them for. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, and I'm going to paint his mandibles. Just like that. Not actually tried it, but if I was going to paint another one of these Wizkids figures, I would attempt to repose it. Now I understand that you can repose these figures in very much the same way as you do with a Reaper figure, so like warm water and what, they treat it a bit like a resin figure, or hot water, and then repose it slightly once it gets a little bit more fluid, so you can reposition him. Just try and get a bit of variation on. Over the weekend I got some of the Reaper Bones zombies, and they're in the painting pile, but as I was washing them all, always give our models a good wash and clean up before we do anything with them. And as I was washing them, I thought, these three zombies are all the same, so I better repose them. So I gave them, no! Oh, sorry, I've done it. Sorted it. Bit of spit. It's fine. Okay. Yeah, it's alright. I just blobbed my buff colour onto his claw. Yeah, so I reposed these zombies and made them so they were all ever slightly different. So obviously you can't do too much with them and keep them on the stock bases and what have you, but just repose the arms. So one of them's got both arms outstretched to the front, where normally they have both arms down to the sides, and just press their legs apart so they didn't look quite so knock-kneed and what have you. So they'll be getting painted in the not too distant future.
Says, what's your favourite movie ever?
Oh, I don't know. That's a very tricky question. So I really like the Wizkids Beholder Mini. I think that's possibly one of my favourites to look at, but not to paint. Because I've tried painting it twice now and had to repaint it both times because I just can't get it how I want it. But I think it looks amazing, especially when you've got the option to give it the ray beam things coming out of its eyes. And it's such a popular figure, so they're going to repackage it shortly into a larger pack. So when it's been out of stock for quite some time, and when it comes back into stock, it will unfortunately have gone from being like $4.99 figure to being a $8.99 figure, like a lot of these larger Wizkids figures will be, like an interim price between the $4.99 and $14.99 figures. So they've done some great minis in that price range already. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Need to hold it in the right place, thank you. So yeah, that Beholder figure is absolutely awesome. I also really like, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Beholders. So Gale Force 9 make a D&D Collector's Series mini called the Xanathar, which is the official Xanathar figure for the Waterdeep Adventures, and I really like it, but it's just got a tiny bit of a bit too much of a comical expression on its face for me to want to try and paint it. But I think it just looks fantastic, and the box art for it looks really good. So yeah, I think when we get a Beholder in our own adventure, it's going to be the Wizkids one that we use. And I would say that is possibly my favourite figure, favourite mini of all time, which is a bit hard. It's a really tough question because I've been like in the hobby for 30 years, and there's a lot of figures, a heck of a lot of figures, and pinning it down to just one is very tough.
So, Gigi Gigot says, I'm new to the hobby, but I've gotten really excited about kit bashing and converting things.
Yep.
Do you do any kit bashing, and if so, how would you go about doing it?
Well, that's quite a big question as well.
When you sawed the head off that McFarlane Spaceman.
Yeah, so generally it's, if you look at something and you think, well, that'd look so much cooler. This is where I'm just clumsy. So that would look so much cooler if it had X, whatever, weapon, head, what have you. So they're the easiest ones to start with. The easiest changes to make are swapping a head, swapping a weapon. That guy who's pointing on the box would look great if he was waving a sword or something to that effect. But and that's the place to start, because that's where you learn sort of cutting and how to cut the thing properly and how to glue it on, and if you need to learn how to pin models together, then they're the things to start with, really, swapping simple parts, because if you dive in too quickly you can end up just getting a bit over your head and overwhelmed sometimes. Now the best thing to do is just give it a try. So you can look at loads of tutorials and you can see other ways that people do it, but I would say that the best thing to do is just get stuck in, really, and don't try and tackle too large a project to start off with. But then once you're confident with a few basic exchanges, then you can dive right into chopping whole minis apart and what have you. It's
Keep it in between.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It's alright, keep me right. So I guess it's just whatever you think looks cool, and as far as I'm concerned, if the model looks cool, then you can substitute it for whatever in the rules, then it doesn't matter whether it doesn't entirely fit within whatever game system you're playing. So if you want Space Marines, so I'll give you an example. So I've recently been building Space Marines, or last year even, built Space Marines, and I decided that all my Intercessor Space Marines and Infiltrators and whatever would all look cooler if they had the Reaver helmets with the skull faces. I don't know if you've done it. And I thought, like, well, I'm just going to give them all those heads. So I organised with a chap on a Facebook trading group, and we swapped. So he wanted a load of Intercessor heads, and I wanted a load of Reaver heads. So we did a trade, and now I've got 50 Space Marines, and they've all got Reaver skull-faced helmets and bare heads with Reaver skull masks and a variety of weapons. So I've given some of them because I really like the Night Lords faction and background from 40k lore. So some of them have got the Nostraman chain glaives instead of chain swords and things like that, and like or power swords. They've got these massive two-handed like axes, and I'll just use them as chain swords or power axes or whatever in the game when I finally get to play a game of 40k with these models. But in the meantime, I think they look really cool, and that's what's most important to me. So, rule of cool. That's what you should go for. So, here we go.
I've just been finding cool looking bits and gluing it onto things I think look nice. Not fully cutting big things apart or anything yet, which does worry me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Before you start hacking into expensive models and whatever, you need to get on the small bits. But it sounds like you're definitely starting on the right kind of thread. Definitely. Have you got some white there, Mrs.?
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to base coat his eyes with this white. We've got 12 minutes left, so that should be fine. I don't think we're going to get to finish his base, but we can certainly get the Umber done. So, oh, there we go. There's a bit of white, blobbed itself out already. So, I think I've got a rogue hair on the end of my brush.
Crafty Gobbo says all the Stormcast have been given Space Wolf heads.
Oh, what with the beardy heads? Because that would look cool. And what colour have you painted your Stormcast? Have you painted them gold, or have you painted them like a silver or something? Because I think silver Stormcast look mint. No, yeah, I got told the other day I was showing my age as a child in the 80s by saying mint to something.
Seems painted.
Yeah. I see what you're doing there. You're going for grey as a colour scheme out. Yeah, that's entirely.
Sprue grey.
Yeah. And funny you should mention that, because Sprue grey is one of the paint colours for the new TT Combat range of aerosol primers, which we will also shortly be adding to the website. Sprue grey is an official colour of their paint range, which I think is pretty cool, actually. It's got some great names. I've downloaded all their product image library today, so we could get that added to the website. Right, so I painted his eyes, I painted the things in that buff, and as you can see, it's quite bright. So what I'm going to get now is, hopefully, and this is MLG, will pass me a yellow, like a nice deep. Yeah, I've got all my paints lined up here on the table, just behind the rust monsters, and I didn't get a yellow for his eyes.
Do you want my favourite yellow?
Yeah, let's have your favourite yellow, that'd be nice. So this is some Reaper Pale Saffron, and hopefully I can get away with just getting the tiniest little blob out here. There we go, because we don't need much, just for his eyes. And then I think I may have to just have a little shade but we'll see. So. There we go, nice bright yellow eyes. Super. So thank you for everybody for tuning in so far, and please give us a follow if you haven't already. That would be very much appreciated. And also check out our YouTube channel, because Mrs. MLG's just put a painting video on there about how she painted a were crocodile from Reaper, which she did yesterday, and so go give that a view. But wait until you finish watching our stream, because that's important. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do these claws, and we're just going to give them a little go over with Graveyard Bone, just as a highlight. Got several experienced painters talking to us in the chat here. I feel a bit. You're all better than You're all better painters than I am. That's like, it's a bit embarrassing when talented individuals watching. But so I'm just going to paint this Graveyard Bone just on the edges of our say edge, I've just blathered it all across the middle of that one. So how in a minute. I was going to paint something completely different this evening, and then I thought, it's been a minute to paint that Umber Hulk for ages. So let's give that a whirl. Quite pleased with how he's turned out, really.
Other people painted a Umber Hulk,
I don't know. How would they? How would you paint your Umber Hulk if you painted an Umber Hulk? If we did ask on Monday, but if anybody that wasn't on the stream on Monday is watching, if you've painted any minis like Reaper or Wizkids or whatever, and you would like to send us photos of your painted figures, and you're happy for us to do so, we would like to feature some painted images on the web store alongside the figures that you have painted, just to let other people know how you could paint some of these figures, because I can't paint everything in the shop much as I would like to. So if you would like to have your work featured on our website, please send us images of your painted figures, and maybe just give us a reminder. I've got a pretty good knowledge of most of the Reaper figures, but if you just tell us which figure it is, that'll be helpful, especially if Mrs. MLG or I aren't the one that sees your message. But if you want to send it via can you send it via Twitter?
What's the best email?
Oh, email's probably better. Email's probably easier. So if you send it to info@mightylancergames.co.uk, you want to send us a little email with a couple of product images, painted images on or whatever, that would be much appreciated. If you'd like to have your work featured on our web store, we'll obviously credit you on the image. and on the product description. But, I guess the same thing goes for any kind of like 40k figures or AOS figures or any other ranges. Doesn't have to be Reaper or Wizkids, because we can put multiple product images on any figure. So if you've got some cool painted figures you're particularly proud of, please send those images and we can add them to our catalogue. That would be awesome. Right, so we're just going to. I need to do something with his eyes because I really like how bright they are, but I think it needs a little bit of something. So let's have a look at our product card here. So they've got a little bit of orange, and then a black line and a blob across the middle on theirs. Guess I really didn't plan his eyes too far in advance. So we'll get a little bit of black here. And then I'm going to do my best job to not paint the entire eye black. There we go. And then we'll give him an eyeball. Maybe. If you were watching on Monday, you might have heard me talking about how I'm a painter that really kind of jabs my paint onto my models rather than brushes it on. There we go. Yeah, that doesn't look too terrible. So I already have some orange here because I didn't know whether I might need that for his body. So I've got a little bit of orange. So what I'm going to do is just get a tiny little bit of that, and I'm going to thin it down quite a bit and just put a little edge around the eye, and just put a tiny bit of that on the palette, and I'll put some water in it. I'm just going to take that around that top edge. There. And both eyes, shading it. So, yeah. And we're going to finish on time today, I think, or some. Well, maybe we're not going to finish on time. That's a complete fib. So we're going to finish somewhere near on time today, rather than running over, I think. Although I think I did say to Mrs. MLG earlier on that if people are still watching, they might just run on. But I think, really, he is about done. Quite happy with him. So let us know in the comments what you think to our Umber Hulk, and then we'll give you a show him off next week, and let you know how he turned out on his base, which I think will look pretty cool, even if I do say so myself. So I'm just going to water down a little bit of that paint, and I'm just going to run it here in the middle of that. Oh yeah. I shouldn't sound so pleased with myself.
No.
Well, because things don't normally go. I'm surprised like I haven't dropped in the paint or something yet. Well, I suppose I nearly did earlier on.
The best one was when you took the dinosaur on the rose.
Oh yeah. We've had some good fails on our videos. Really. Dinosaur in the rose bush, giant all over the living room. It was yeah, pretty cool. So there we go. There's our Umber Hulk. We'll get him on his base and get him sorted out. But let us know what you think. I'm quite pleased with him. Going to be quite happy. Do the what?
Sure.
Oh yeah. So there we are. I think he looks pretty good. Nice and subtle, shall we? Hopefully. And he's ready to start destroying some adventurers once I get him stuck on his base. So Finishing almost on time. Finishing almost on time.
Yeah, it shows you rust monsters.
No, I haven't painted them. So I have made some bases just for my rust monsters. So the rust monsters are Reaper rust monsters. They needed slightly reposing. So we'll maybe save those for next week, and we might paint those on stream next week, unless I find something else that I fancy doing a little bit more. But so. Yeah, our next stream is going to be Sunday, where we're going to be playing a bit of classic Skyrim, which we didn't realise until we were looking at it the other day is now about 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, Skyrim, but it's still an awesome game. It looks fantastic, so we're going to be playing a bit of that. Please join us for Skyrim Sunday, 4 till 5. And Little Miss MLG will be telling me exactly what I'm doing wrong and where to go and whether there's a dragon behind me or anything like that, which is quite entertaining. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Please check out our YouTube channel. Give us a follow. Do all the fancy bits and pieces. And thanks for watching. Taking your evening to watch us.